When the weapons of mass destruction thing turned out not to be true, I expected the American people to rise up. They didn't. Then, when the Abu Ghraib torture thing surfaced, and it was revealed that our government participated in rendition, a practice where we kidnap people and turn them over to regimes who specialize in torture, I was sure then the American people would be heard from. We stood mute. Then came the news that we jailed thousands of so-called terrorist suspects, locked them up without the right to a trial or even the right to confront their accusers. Certainly, we would never stand for that. We did. And now it's been discovered the executive branch has been conducting massive illegal domestic surveillance on its own citizens, you and me. And I at least consoled myself that finally, the American people will have had enough. Evidently, we haven't. In fact, if the people of this country have spoken the messages, we're okay with it all. Torture, warrantless search and seizures, illegal wiretappings, prison without a fair trial, or any trial, war on false pretenses. We as a citizenry are apparently not offended. There are no demonstrations on college campuses. In fact, there's no clear indication that young people even seem to notice. Well, Melissa Hughes noticed. Now, you might think, instead of withholding her taxes, she could have protested the old-fashioned way, made a placard and demonstrated at a presidential or vice presidential appearance. But we've lost the right to that as well. The Secret Service can now declare free speech zones to contain, control, and in effect, criminalize protest. Stop for a second and try to fathom that. At a presidential rally, parade, or appearance, if you have on a supportive t-shirt, you can be there. If you're wearing or carrying something in protest, you can be removed. This in the United States of America. This in the United States of America. Is Melissa Hughes the only one embarrassed? And what I'm most sick and tired of is how every time somebody disagrees with how the government is running things, he or she is labeled un-American.
Evidently, it's speech time.
And speech in this country is free, you hack. Free for me, free for you, free for Melissa Hughes to stand up to her government and say, stick it.
Objection.
I object to government abusing its power to squash the constitutional freedoms of its citizenry. And God forbid anybody challenge it. They're smeared as being a heretic. Melissa Hughes is an American. Melissa Hughes is an American. Melissa Hughes is an American. Last night, I went to bed with a book, but the book contained a speech by Adlai Stevenson. The year was 1952. He said, "The tragedy of our day is the climate of fear in which we live, and fear breeds repression. Too often, sinister threats to the Bill of Rights, to freedom of the mind, are concealed under the patriotic cloak of anti-communism." Today, it's the cloak of anti-terrorism. Stevenson also remarked, it's far easier to fight for principles than to live up to them.
About what's going on in Ireland with the Celtic Tiger and the banks are hurting so much, the downfall. What's the story here?
Do you really want to know?
I'd love to know.
Well, I'll tell you, it's like what has happened all over the Western world for the last 20 or 30 years. Greed, and more fucking greed, and cheap money. And in Ireland, it's a tragedy what happened to the Tiger. We have, I'd say, 4 causes. We had a stupid fucking government. We had a regulator that was asleep at the wheel. We had very deceitful and conniving and corrupt developers. And of course, above all, wanking fucking bankers. Wanking bankers. We had these arseholes that for the last 20, 30 years are getting these massive bonuses, these employees and directors of banks, on the misfortune of the working class and getting these huge bonuses and salaries. But, you know, if you and all these arseholes should be thrown in jail and the keys thrown away for the rest of their life. And you know, sir, if you went in and you're unemployed and you wanted to take a loaf of bread out of a store or a supermarket to feed your family, guess what? you'll be up in court for it. These assholes are living all over the world now on the backs of the misfortunate working people. And who's going to pay for all this? We've mortgaged the next generation or two. Who's going to pay for it? The working men. We got the labourer, the small farmer, the fisherman, the nurse, the teacher, the policeman, the fireman, the plumber, the carpenter. Fuck's sake, man, this is a joke.
Stop! Question. What is money? What is money? Money is a non-existent theoretical force that has never, does not, and will never exist except in theory on computer screens. People die and starve because they don't have enough digits on a computer screen. It's incredible and it's extraordinary and it's grotesque, but unfortunately it's true. People think, what is money? Well, how is money created? There's another big question. Oh, it's governments. No! It's private banks lending non-existent money called credit. What is credit? There's your credit. That's it. When you go into a bank and you want to borrow $50,000, the bank doesn't print any money. It doesn't move precious metals anywhere. It types into your account $50,000, and from that moment, you start owing it not only $50,000, but the interest on the $50,000. And if you can't pay that back through no fault of your own, because the banking system has done what it's just done and you lose your job so you can't pay them back, they get your wealth that does exist, your home, your car, your business, your land. It's been going on for centuries. This is why it has sucked the wealth of the world into the hands of the few. What is an economic boom? It's when there's lots of units of exchange, money in circulation, creating lots of economic activity, which causes people to have confidence in the economic situation. In those times, they get more and more in debt because they're so confident. Or we can have a bigger house, a bigger car, 2 vacations, and all the rest of it. And the banking system, controlled by the same people and coordinated by the same people, have put that out there. Fishing line out, lots of credit. Hey, what do you mean you earn, $2 an hour? You want a $500,000 mortgage? No problem. Here you go. Gotcha out there. It doesn't matter. We're getting the house eventually anyway. And then what they do is they take money out of circulation. They're pulling the bloody line in now. And as they take money out of circulation, oh no, we've got a credit crunch, we can't make loans and give you any more money that doesn't exist and charge you interest on it. Oh no, it's real serious. We haven't got a problem though, because they'll bail us out, because we control them, you see. So, and then what happens if we move over here into a slump or a depression, not because anyone doesn't want to work, not because people want to lose their homes, but because there is not enough units of exchange in circulation for the economic activity to go on that allows them to earn the money to pay back the loans. So now the banks go, thank you very much, I'll have some of that. And the only difference between a boom and a bust is what the private banking cartel has allowed as units of exchange through credit or not through credit. I heard a politician, they all look the same to me. I don't know, I can't tell them apart. They've all got dark suits with heads on and their mouths are moving. That's all I can. Oh, I've seen someone in the last few days. Someone yesterday, some politician or other, said that they had to bail out the banks here with more debt for the people who've already been screwed by those they're supposed to get out of trouble. Main Street cannot function without credit. People can't pay their bills without credit. Big question. What the hell system allows that to be the case? No. So this money thing is in the DNA of society. Controls choice. And all the rest of it. It controls whether we have shelter or no shelter, and the few control it. So we have Greenspan, starts the old subprime going under his watch and stuff, and off it goes. But the point is, all these banks are being taken over by other banks, and people think, oh, it's terrible for the banking system. Lehman Brothers has gone. Merrill Lynch has been taken over by Bank of America. Oh my God, what's happening? Oh, Bear Stearns, oh, it must be terrible. No, it's terrible for the people in those banks that lose their jobs, yeah, have families to look after, but it ain't terrible for the system. Because this network of people own the game. And although the faces within the game may change, the people controlling the game do not change. So they never lose. Oh, Merrill Lynch has gone down. Oh, we own Bank of America. Fine, there we go. This is how it works. God, people only realized in that area of society that doesn't look at this. So, like I say, these own the banking game. And what goes on inside it, they still own it. They still control it. And they want a world central bank. And they've just taken enormous strides towards it at the expense of the harmony, the peace, and the lives of people. There you go. There's the banking system. There's the world financial system. Las Vegas freaking casino. That's all it is. It's nothing to do with the benefit of human beings and daily life among the mass of the people. It's just a casino. And this guy, old Paulson, Henry Paulson, he's in old Goldman Sachs, head of Goldman Sachs, where the old subprime thing was going, and Goldman Sachs was massively involved in all that stuff. He then goes through the revolving door between the corporations and government, becomes Treasury Secretary, and then he says, oh, I've got a great idea. Let's give what is $1 trillion and then some to the banks, because not least because when I've finished in government, I'm going back through the door into the banking system. And we stand for this. We stand for this. And of course, what is the basis of it? Be afraid. Be afraid. When people are frightened of anything, they give their power away. Oh, isn't it wonderful, however, how many people in this country have said, we don't want this now. We're making strides here. Because the politicians are voting for their shadow people masters. They're voting against the vast number of people in this country that can now see it. It's so bloody blatant. But when people are in fear, they give their power away to that which they think can save them from what they fear. And this embarrassing statement to the nation the other day from Bush, I thought someone had stuck something up his bum, his bloody eyes. He looked terrified. I'm kind of paraphrasing, but this is what he said. Be afraid, just be very afraid. Lost homes, savings, all that stuff. Just do as we say and we'll save you all. God bless America, thank you. And that was it. Totalitarian tiptoe. This is another technique of manipulation. You know you're going there, but you know if you go in one leap, the change in society is such that people go, what's going on? What's going on? So you go in as big a leap as you can get, but not too big that you get a big reaction through the change that takes place. And from here, you know where you're going and you just go in steps. That's how a free trade zone became a centralized fascist dictatorship, which is what the European Union is. And interestingly, the European Union was created from the start through an organization called the Pan-Europa Movement, which was headed and is still headed to this day by one of these elite bloodlines going back to the ancient world, the Habsburg dynasty. It doesn't matter! They're masks on the same face! So what if they get in? Same thing will bloody happen. Comply! No! No, no! Not if it's enslaving me and my children and imposing on my freedom. Comply! Leave your home now it's foreclosed. No! 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 Let's follow this through, shall we? Millions of people in the world are losing their homes, being foreclosed, and ending up homeless. Let's follow this through. Why have you lost your home, my friend? Because I can't pay me mortgage. Why can't you pay your mortgage? Because I lost my job. Why did you lose your job? Because the great banking collapse, they can't get this, they can't get my company went bust. And who's taking your home away and saying you've got to leave? The banks that caused the fricking problem, and we are leaving? What are we doing? What are we doing? No, we won't leave when the banks have caused the problem and now they're telling us to leave to take the assets. No, we won't. And people who are not being foreclosed need to support those that are. We're all in this together. Compulsory vaccinations. No, no, no. You must do what we say. We have changed the law. Not if you are imposing on my freedom and my rights to be a free citizen with a free voice. No, no, no. What are they going to do? They come out of Downing Street, whether it's Clegg and his mate bloody Cameron or it's bloody Obama or whoever it is in America, and they say, we've had a discussion and this is what we're going to do. What if vast numbers of people say, well, we ain't doing it? They have got no power whatsoever. Their power comes in our acquiescence. Oh, but you can't defy the law. Okay, let's follow this through, shall we? By the way, while I'm talking, put your arms out and I'll put the handcuffs on, because that's what you're telling me. What you're telling me is this. We have no say in laws that are passed. And then we have to obey those laws. Well, okay, forget freedom then. Okay, what if they passed a law that says we take your children away? Would you obey it? Well, no. So there is a line then. There is a line. It's just where is that line? And if a law does not respect human freedom, it does not respect human justice, it doesn't respect fair play, we should not be acquiescing to those laws. We should be refusing to acquiesce.
Rise like lions after slumber in unvanquishable number. Shake your chains to earth like dew, which in sleep has fallen on you. Ye are many, they are few. When we figure that out, there goes their way of life.
This is a point I think is very important to stress to those in uniform and to those in the dark suits in government who are serving this system while not actually instigating it, they're serving it. You have no power. I don't care if you're in the military. I don't care if you've got how many kind of stars on your uniform. I don't care what level of the police force you're in. I don't care if you're doing roadblocks. I don't care if you're pulling people off the street. I don't care what you're doing. You have no power. Your uniform has the power. Take your uniform off, okay? Put it in the wardrobe. Where's your power? Go and get another job without that uniform. Where's your power? You have no power. You are employed to animate that uniform, which is an extension of the state, and that's all you are, and therefore you are expendable. While you give your soul away, while you give your mind away, while you give your morals and decency away, advancing this fascist dictatorship, you will be okay with the fascists that you're serving. But your children and your grandchildren have to live in the world you are creating. I And one day you're going to have to understand that, and I don't envy you that moment, because it's going to be horrific when it dawns upon you the world that you've actually created. The people in uniform and the dark suits that administer the system while not being the originators of it, they have to start breaking ranks, okay? Get some backbone, open your mind, look at what's going on, and get some freaking backbone before you administer and impose and enforce a world that will be grotesque for your children and grandchildren. In fact, not even that, for yourself.
I asked him the other day, apropos of a sense that something was going seriously wrong in this country. I said, how many times have the police searched you? He said, Papa, I can't count. There's so many times.
Mr. Howe, that may well have happened, and if you say it did, I am not to gainsay you, but that is not an excuse to go out rioting and cause the sort of damage that we have been seeing over the last few days.
Where were you in 1981 in Brixton?
Mr.
They had I don't call it rioting, I call it an insurrection of the masses of the people. It is happening in Syria, it is happening in Clapham, it's happening in Liverpool, it's happening in Port of Spain, Trinidad, and that is the nature of the historical moment.
Mr. Howe, Mr. Howe, if I can just ask you, you are not a stranger to riots yourself, I understand, are you? You have taken part in them yourself.
I have never taken part in a single riot. I've been on demonstrations that ended up in a conflict, and have some respect for an old West Indian Negro and stop accusing me of being a rioter. Because you won't tickle me to get abusive. You just sound idiotic. Have some respect.
Dorcas Howe,
grandchildren.
Thank you very much for joining us from Croydon. Dorcas Howe, their writer and broadcaster.
Okay, well, there's been a huge knock-on to lots of aspects of it.
You know, I would ask you the same question that I asked you a couple of years ago, and that is, why do you hold on, as it seems to me you do, hold on almost for dear life, to a kind of optimism, despite all the things that that you see and comment on in front of you? Why not recognize the situation for what it is, as you describe it so well, and then perhaps point ourselves in a different direction?
Down the same road? There is no different direction down that road. Don't kid yourself. There just is no different direction down that road. This isn't a strange road. We, you and I, who have been lucky enough to have been born in a free society, take freedom for granted as if it's a natural phenomenon. But let me ask you, what fraction of the human race today lives in free societies?
Tiny, tiny, tiny percentage.
Over history, what fraction at any moment of time ever lived in free societies?
Even tinier.
Even tinier.
I'm leading you down the garden path, Professor Friedman.
No, you're not. No, you're not. It is true that the normal condition of mankind is tyranny and misery. We've escaped. We've been extraordinarily fortunate to escape into an island of freedom and prosperity. If we do not maintain that island of freedom and prosperity, if we do not maintain the essential features of the society which made that freedom and prosperity possible, there isn't a wide range of alternatives. We go to misery and tyranny, to the normal state of mankind. Why am I optimistic? Because we're all so ignorant. If we could really predict the future, you couldn't be optimistic. But we've seen historically, time and again, that people who have tried to make long-range predictions have not been very good at it. The human race is a funny thing. It's always turning up surprises on you. People are capable of doing things you wouldn't have expected to them, of rising to the circumstance. And I suppose I maintain my optimism partly because my innate character is optimistic, but partly because the consequences of not recognizing our state of affairs, of not acting in time to check it, seem to me so horrendous that I cannot but believe that as people realize the alternative before them, they won't take measures to make sure it doesn't happen.
Well, what took us into this little island of time in which we're so different, or have enjoyed a difference from all the history of mankind?
That's a very interesting question, and it's one that can be spread more broadly. It's a subject I've been very much interested in. From time to time in man's history there have been golden ages. 5th century BC in Greece, the Renaissance in Italy, First Elizabethan period in England, the 19th century in Britain. We're in the midst of what I regard as a golden age in the United States, 19th and early 20th century. Now the interesting question is, how is it here, to take it out of our own context, here's the Greek peninsula. I refer to it as Peloponnesian, and somebody reminded me I should not, that it's, what is it? It's a different peninsula. At any rate, the area where Greece...
We'll accept it as that. Okay.
It was the same people there in the 6th century BC and in the 5th century BC. The same people in the 4th century as in the 5th century. Why is it in the 5th century you had this sudden flowering, this enormously productive and brilliant period? It disappears in the 4th, 3rd, 2nd century BC. Why is it? Same people. Well, I think in many ways the fundamental explanation, and now I'm simplifying and conjecturing, this isn't a solid, well-sustained hypothesis, is that some accident comes along which wipes the slate clean of restraints that have been holding people back. In our own golden age, it's very clear what that was. It was a new continent, with new people coming, with a new form of government, with the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence. It was a opportunity in which people were unrestrained and in which the natural instincts for people to improve their lot were given freest and fullest rein. Now what happens, and the reason these golden ages tend to be relatively brief, the reason they last 100 years, 150 years at most, is that as time passes, the slate gets filled up. It's very much easier to introduce restrictions and restraints than it is to remove them. It's easier to pass a law than it is to repeal a law. And so over the course of time, you tend to impose these chains and restraints on yourselves, mostly for good reasons. The initial objectives are always good. That doesn't mean the outcome is. And finally, the slate becomes so filled up, if I may continue to use that image, that there's no more room to write on. And you need somehow something which will provide for another removal of restraints.
What do you think would provide now for a tabula rasa, again, a wiping clear of the slate?
Well, I think the first thing that's necessary to wipe clear the slate is to set a limit to government spending. The thing that has been encroaching more and more upon that slate is that whereas until 1928 or 9, total government spending in the United States, federal, state, and local, never exceeded 10% of our income, except in the Civil War and the First World War. It has now risen to over 40% of our income. If that continues, we're through. 40% is an awful lot. In Britain now, it's reached somewhere between 50 and 60%. And the first necessity, I think, as a tactical matter, is to set an end to that. As a strategic matter, the main necessity is to have a change in the intellectual climate of opinion, which will substitute a belief in individual responsibility for the false belief in social responsibility. Now let me emphasize, the problems that have arisen to us have not come from evil people who were trying in a conspiracy or anything like that to enslave us. That hasn't been our problem. Our problems have arisen from good people who are trying to do good, but trying to do good in a fundamentally flawed way. The welfare state is in many ways a noble construct, a noble concept. It's the concept that we ought to help our fellow men. What flaws it is that it's one thing for you to help me out of your pocket. It's another thing for you to help me out of his pocket. And the fundamental flaw of the welfare state, in my opinion, is the idea that you should do good with somebody else's money. Now, what's wrong with that? Two things are wrong. First place, nobody spends somebody else's money as carefully as he spends his own. We talked about New York City. About 7 or 8 years ago, I've forgotten exactly when it was, Kenneth Galbraith, in an article in the New York Magazine, said there were no problems in New York that could not be solved by the city spending enough money. If my memory serves me right, he said by doubling New York's budget. Well, in the meantime, New York's budget has quadrupled, and the problems have gotten worse, not better. And that's cause and effect. Because when you say spend more money, whose money? The city of New York spent more money, but where did it get it? From its citizens. There was no more money in total to be spent. But nobody spends somebody else's money as careful as he spends his own. So you had more money being spent carelessly and less money being spent carefully. In the second place, equally important, you cannot spend somebody else's money unless you first get it. How do you get it? Ultimately and fundamentally by sending a policeman to take it away from them. So the concept of doing good with somebody else's money has force or coercion built into it as an essential feature. And those flaws, the waste which arises out of spending somebody else's money and the coercion which is unavoidable, destroy the good in the idea of doing good and convert it into doing bad.